My name is Avraham. I am writing this account with a trembling hand, not from age, though I am 64 years old, but from the urgency that burns in my chest like a contained fire. I am, or I was, a man of absolute certainty. For 40 years, I sat in the study halls of Jerusalem, surrounded by walls of books, the smell of old paper and the comforting murmur of prayer. I was a rabbi, a teacher of the law, a guardian of the tradition. I wore my heritage like armor. I looked at the world through the lens of strict interpretation, and in that view, there was no room for the one called Jesus of Nazareth. To me, he was Yeshua the deceiver, the great mistake of history, the reason our people had suffered exile and persecution. When I saw Christian tourists walking the Via Dolorosa, carrying their wooden crosses, singing their hymns, I did not feel hate, but I felt a profound dismissal. I thought they were chasing a ghost. I believed they were worshiping a man instead of the Creator. I taught my students that the Messiah was yet to come, that he would be a warrior king who would establish peace through strength and law. I was so sure. I was so arrogant in my defense of God that I did not realize I was standing in his way. But truth is not a theory. Truth is a person. And on September 14th, 2025, on a rain-slicked highway leading up to Jerusalem, my theories died, and the truth met me in the center of the storm. It was late in the evening. I had been in the north, giving a lecture on the importance of maintaining our spiritual borders against foreign influence. The irony does not escape me now. I was driving my old sedan, the wipers fighting a losing battle against a torrential downpour that is rare for September. The sky was not just dark, it was heavy, pressing down on the hills of Judea. I remember gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white, thinking about the warm tea waiting for me at home and the passage of Talmud I intended to review before sleep. Then, the world shattered. A transport truck coming from the opposite direction lost traction on a curve. I saw the headlights first, two blinding suns cutting through the water. Then came the sound, a terrible grinding screech of metal sliding against asphalt. There was no time to pray, no time to think, no time to bargain. The impact was not like sound, it was like a physical blow to the soul. I felt the car fold around me. I felt the crushing weight of the engine block smashing into my legs. There was a moment of searing, white-hot agony that tore through my chest, and then, impossibly, silence. The rain stopped. The pain vanished. The darkness lifted. I found myself hovering about 10 feet in the air. The scene below was gruesome. I saw the twisted metal of my car, looking like a crushed tin can wedged under the chassis of the truck. Steam was rising from the radiator, mixing with the rain. I saw a body slumped over the steering wheel, blood matting the gray beard, the black kippah askew on the dashboard. I looked at it with a strange detachment, realizing with a jolt of shock that it was me. That was my shell. That was the vessel I had inhabited for 64 years. But I was not there. I was here, above, weightless, more alive than I had ever been in the study hall. I tried to call out to the truck driver who was stumbling out of his cab, clutching his head, screaming into the phone. "I'm here," I shouted. "I'm all right." But my voice made no sound in the heavy air. I was invisible to him, a whisper in a hurricane. Then, a force took hold of me. It was not a wind, but a pull, like a massive magnet drawing a piece of iron. The accident scene, the rain, the lights, the road began to fade, dissolving into a gray mist. I was moving, traveling at a speed that felt like thought itself. The gray mist darkened into a deep velvet black, and for a moment I felt a flicker of terror. Was this the grave? Was this Sheol? Was I to remain in darkness? But the darkness did not hold me. It tore open. I did not walk into a tunnel of light. It was more like stepping through a veil of water into a new dimension. The atmosphere changed instantly. It was no longer the thin, cold air of Earth. It was thick with life, vibrant, pulsating, and there was light everywhere. It didn't come from a sun or a lamp. The very air seemed to glow. It was a golden white brilliance that should have blinded me, yet my eyes drank it in like water. It was a light that carried information, emotion, and love. And in the center of that light, he was waiting. He did not float. He stood on ground that looked like polished glass mixed with fire. He was wearing a simple robe, the kind a common man would wear in the ancient days, woven without a seam. I walked toward him, or perhaps I was drawn, I do not know. As I got closer, I looked at his face. I expected to see Moses. I expected Abraham, our father. I expected a faceless brilliance, but I saw a man. He was unmistakably Jewish. He had the features of my people, the dark, deep-set eyes, the olive skin, the beard that framed a face of rugged strength. But it was his expression that stopped my heart. It was not the face of a judge. It was the face of a brother who has been waiting a very long time for you to come home. I stopped a few feet from him. My soul was vibrating, trembling. I looked down at his feet. They were bare, and on the top of each foot there was a mark, a scar of white light. I looked at his hands, hanging loosely by his sides. In the center of each wrist there was the same mark. The revelation hit me with the force of a second crash. The breath left my spirit. The books I had read, the arguments I had made, the mockery I had spoken, it all crashed down on me. "It is you," I whispered. My voice was small, broken. "It was always you." He did not speak immediately. He stepped forward and closed the distance between us. He reached out and took my hands in his. His touch was solid, warm, and terrifyingly real. "Shalom, Avraham," he said. His voice was like the sound of many waters, yet gentle as a father speaking to a child. He spoke in Hebrew, but it was a Hebrew more ancient and pure than the one I spoke. It bypassed my ears and went straight to the core of my being. I fell to my knees. The shame was unbearable. I wanted to hide, to cover my face. "Lord," I wept, "I did not know. I fought against you. I called you a liar. I told my students to stay away from you. I am a man of unclean lips." I expected him to pull away. I expected him to say, "I told you so." But he did not let go of my hands. He knelt down with me, right there on the floor of heaven, until he was eye level with me. "I know," he said softly. "You defended the house, but you did not know the master of the house. You sought God with your mind, Avraham, but you locked the door of your heart against me. But I have not brought you here to judge you. I have brought you here because the time is very short and there are things you must see." He stood up and pulled me to my feet. He wiped the tears from my face with his thumb. "The prayers of your grandmother who believed in secret have been answered today. But listen to me. You are not staying. You must go back." "Back?" I looked at the peace around me, and then the memory of the cold rain and the pain rushed back. "Lord, please, I am an old man. Let me stay. I cannot go back to that emptiness." "You must," he said, and his face grew serious, his eyes burning with a fire that was both terrifying and beautiful. "A great darkness is covering the earth disguised as light. My people are walking into a trap. They are asleep at the wheel, just as you were. You must go back and tell them what I am about to show you. You must tell them that the time of playing religion is over." He turned, and the space around us began to shift. The golden light dissolved into a scenery that was vivid and hyper-real. "Walk with me," he said. We were suddenly walking through a vast open plain. But as we walked, the ground changed. We entered a massive structure, a hall that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. It was filled with tables, row after row of banquet tables covered in fine white linen. "Look closely," he commanded. I saw thousands, perhaps millions of people sitting at these tables. They were dressed in their finest clothes. I saw men in expensive suits, women in designer dresses, religious leaders in their robes, rabbis, priests, imams, pastors. The atmosphere seemed festive. There was music playing, a rhythmic, hypnotic beat that seemed to make everyone nod in unison. Waiters were moving among the tables, placing large, ornate silver platters in front of the guests. The people looked starving. Their eyes were hollow, their skin pale, their hands shaking with anticipation. "They are hungry," I said to Jesus. "They are famished." "Watch what they eat," he replied. I leaned in closer to the nearest table. A man in a sharp business suit grabbed a handful from the silver platter. From a distance, it looked like bread. But as he brought it to his mouth, I saw what it really was. It was gray dust. Ash. He shoved it into his mouth, chewing frantically. He swallowed, and I saw his face contort in a momentary grimace of dissatisfaction, but then he immediately reached for more. I looked at a woman across from him. She was holding a golden goblet. She tipped it back to drink, but instead of wine or water, a thick black sludge poured out. She drank it greedily, wiping her mouth, her eyes glazing over as if she were drugged. "What is this?" I asked, horrified. "Why are they eating ash? Why do they drink poison?" Jesus looked at the crowd with deep sorrow. "This is the table of the world. The dust they eat is the noise of the age. It is the news that spreads fear. It is the entertainment that numbs the mind. It is the politics that stirs hatred. They gorge themselves on it morning and night. They scroll, they watch, they listen, thinking they are being filled, thinking they are becoming wise. But it is only ash. It offers no life. It offers no strength. He pointed to a group of religious men at a nearby table. They were arguing over a text, but their plates were full of the same dust. Only theirs was mixed with small, shiny stones. And these, he said, eat the dust of pride. They consume knowledge without spirit. They memorize the letter, but do not know the author. They feel full because they are bloated with their own importance, but their spirits are withering. Avraham, look at them. Really look. I looked. Underneath the fine clothes, underneath the smiles and the nodding heads, I saw their true state. They were skeletons. Their spiritual bodies were emaciated, skin stretched over bone. They were too weak to stand, too weak to fight. They were being kept upright only by the chairs they sat in. This is the condition of humanity in 2025, Jesus said. They are spiritually anorexic. They have replaced the bread of life with the distractions of the enemy. And because they are weak, when the shaking comes, and it is coming, they will not have the strength to endure. They will collapse. He turned to me. You must warn them. Tell them to push away from this table. Tell them that unless they eat of me, unless they find nourishment in my presence, in silence, in the word that breathes, they will starve in the midst of plenty. The scene shifted again before I could process the horror of the starving feast. The banquet hall vanished, replaced by a corridor lined with mirrors. The mirrors were tall, reaching up to the sky, and they were everywhere. It was a maze of glass. I saw people standing in front of these mirrors, but these were not ordinary mirrors. As I watched, I saw a man standing before one. He was short and balding, but the reflection showed him as a tall, powerful giant. He smiled at the reflection, preening, adjusting his tie. He spoke to the mirror, and the reflection spoke back, validating him, praising him. I saw a woman holding a Bible. She stood before a mirror that seemed to warp and twist. She read a verse about sacrifice, but the mirror echoed back a message of comfort and gain. She nodded, saying, "Yes, that is my truth. God wants me to be comfortable." She was not worshiping God. She was worshiping the version of God that looked like her. "The house of mirrors," Jesus said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "This is the age of the self. Everyone has created a truth that suits them. They look for a God who agrees with their lifestyle, who hates the people they hate, who votes the way they vote. They do not want the Holy One of Israel. They want a divine mascot." He walked up to one of the mirrors. Inside it, I saw a preacher speaking to a massive stadium. He was shouting about victory and power, but there was no mention of the cross, no mention of repentance, no mention of the humble path. The crowd cheered, but Jesus looked at the mirror and wept. "They have exchanged the window for a mirror," he said. "A window lets you see the reality outside, the needs of others, the face of God. A mirror only shows you yourself. My people are trapped in a loop of self-obsession. They call it faith, but it is idolatry." Then he did something shocking. He picked up a small jagged stone from the ground. "The truth," he said, "is a stone that shatters the illusion." He threw the stone at the mirror. Crack! The glass spiderwebbed and then fell in shards. The man standing in front of it gasped. Suddenly, he saw himself as he truly was. Small, fearful, imperfect. He looked terrified. He looked around for another mirror to hide in. "The events coming before December 22nd will be like this stone," Jesus declared. "I am going to shatter the mirrors. I am going to break the illusions of security, the illusions of righteousness. Men will see themselves naked. They will see that their truth cannot save them. For many, it will be terrifying. They will run to find a new lie to believe, but for those who are mine, it will be a liberation. They will finally stop looking at themselves and look at me." December 22nd, I repeated, the date burning into my mind. "Lord, why that date? What happens?" "It is a line in the sand," he answered. "Not the end, but a separation. A great sifting is coming. Before that day, the mirrors will begin to crack. You will see leaders exposed. You will see institutions crumble. You will see the things people trusted in, money, reputation, alliances, turn to vapor. Those who love the lie will glue the mirror back together. Those who love the truth will step over the broken glass and follow me." He led me further. The maze of mirrors faded, and we entered a place that was loud. The noise was physically painful. It sounded like a million radios tuned to different stations, screaming over each other. It was a chaotic wall of sound. Sirens, phone notifications, shouting voices, advertisements, political debates. I saw people walking through a dense fog, their heads down, their ears plugged with devices. They were trying to pray. I saw a man moving his lips, trying to call out to God, but every time he tried to focus, a new sound blasted him. A notification, a breaking news alert, a ringtone. He would stop, look at his device, and the prayer would die. I saw a woman trying to read scripture. She read one line, and then a thought about her bank account, triggered by a passing billboard, invaded her mind. She closed the book, defeated. The war on silence, Jesus said. He waved his hand, and for a second, the noise around us dropped to a hum, allowing me to think. The enemy knows he cannot destroy me, so he tries to drown out my voice. He has filled the world with noise so that my children cannot hear the still small voice. They are afraid of silence, Avraham. If they are quiet for one moment, they feel the emptiness of their souls, so that they rush to fill it with noise. He looked at me with intensity. Tell them to shut the door. Tell them to turn off the screens. Tell them that I am not in the wind. I am not in the earthquake. I am not in the fire. I am in the silence they are running from. If they do not learn to be silent now, they will be deaf when I give the command to move. We continued walking, and the terrain changed to a dry, cracked desert. The heat was oppressive. I saw people digging holes in the sand. They were frantic, sweating, their hands bleeding. They were digging cisterns, trying to store water. I saw a man digging a hole and lining it with gold bars. "This will save me," he muttered. "When the crash comes, this will keep me safe." He poured water into the hole, but the water seeped through the cracks between the gold and vanished into the sand. He cried out in frustration and poured more, but the hole remained empty. I saw another group digging a hole and lining it with cans of food and weapons. "We are prepared," they said. "Let the world burn. We are safe." They poured their hope into that hole, but I saw rats burrowing in from underneath, eating the food, rusting the metal. The broken cisterns, Jesus said, referencing the prophet Jeremiah, "My people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewn for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water." He walked over to the man with the gold. The man didn't look up. He was too busy trying to plug the leaks with stock certificates. "They are preparing for the storm with the things of the storm," Jesus explained. "They think money will shield them. They think a bunker will hide them, but the storm that is coming is spiritual. Gold cannot stop a spirit of fear. A weapon cannot fight a spirit of despair. Their cisterns are leaking, Avraham. Everything they are hoarding will run dry." He turned to me, and the landscape dissolved into pure white light again. "The only thing that will hold water," he said, "is a heart that is surrendered. Security is not in what you have, it is in who holds you. Before December 22nd, the leaks in these cisterns will become visible. The markets will shake, not to destroy, but to show where the cracks are. Those who trust in their preparations will panic. Those who trust in me will be like a tree planted by the river. They will not fear when heat comes." I felt my mind reeling. The banquet of dust, the house of mirrors, the war on silence, the broken cisterns. It was a devastating diagnosis of our time. "Lord," I asked, "is there any hope? Is anyone standing? Or are we all lost in this illusion?" He smiled, and for the first time the scenery became beautiful. "Oh, yes, Avraham, there is a remnant. There are those who have pushed away the plate of dust. There are those who have smashed the mirror. Come, I will show you the army of the Lamb." The white light swirled, and I felt us lifting up, higher and higher. The sensation of travel returned, but this time there was an anticipation in the air, a sweetness that smelled like incense and rain. "You have seen the disease," he said. "Now, see the cure." We ascended into a realm that felt less like a place and more like a state of being. The air here was not just clear, it was alive with a frequency of peace that my earthly body could never have sustained. But in this spirit form, I drank it in. Below us, the visions of the starving banquet and the house of mirrors faded into a gray mist, a memory of a dying world. "Look," Jesus said, pointing toward the horizon. The mist parted, and I saw a landscape that looked like the earth, but stripped of its buildings and highways. It was a dark, swirling ocean of fog and shadows. The winds were howling winds of confusion, of panic, of lies. It was a storm such as I had never seen, even in the worst winters of Jerusalem. The waves of this dark ocean were crashing over people, threatening to sweep them away into an abyss of despair. But scattered throughout this dark expanse, I saw points of light. They were not massive lighthouses or blazing bonfires. They were small, steady flames, like the Shabbat candles my mother used to light. As I looked closer, I saw that these lights were people. I saw a young woman sitting on a bus, surrounded by angry, shouting people. She was not shouting back. She was not scrolling on her phone. She was staring out the window, her lips moving almost imperceptibly. From the crown of her head, a thin golden strand rose up, piercing through the dark clouds, disappearing into the heavens above. I saw an old man in a hospital bed, his body wasted by disease. Doctors were rushing around him, worried, stressed, but he was smiling. He was whispering words of comfort to the nurse. The same golden strand rose from him, glowing fiercely in the gloom. I saw a father at a kitchen table looking at a stack of bills that he could not pay. His head was in his hands, but he was not weeping in despair. He was speaking to the empty room, saying, "You are my shepherd, I shall not want." And the golden strand held him fast. The invisible anchor, Jesus said. His voice was filled with a pride that made my heart ache with longing. This is how my remnant survives. The world sees only the storm. They see the economy collapsing, the rumors of war, the sickness. They are terrified because they are floating on the surface of the waters. But my own, they are anchored to a kingdom that cannot be shaken. He turned to me, and his eyes were fierce. Avraham, tell them that the anchor does not hold because the water is calm. The anchor holds because it grips the rock. In the days into December 22nd, the waves will get higher. The news will become more terrifying. The logic of men will fail. Those who try to swim with their own strength will drown in fear. But look at the rope. I looked. The golden strands were not rigid. They were flexible, moving with the people, but they were unbreakable. That strand is woven from trust, he explained. Every time they chose to pray instead of worry, they added a thread. Every time they chose to forgive instead of hate, they added a thread. Now, in the storm, the rope is strong enough to hold them. This is the difference. The religious man has a theology about the anchor. The man of the Spirit is attached to the anchor. The vision shifted. We were now standing in a vast forest, but it was a forest of strange proportions. There were massive, towering trees, oaks and cedars that seemed to touch the sky. They had enormous branches covered in lush green leaves. They looked impressive, invincible. People were gathering under them, seeking shade, admiring their height. These are the leaders of this age, Jesus whispered. The famous pastors, the great rabbis, the influencers, the politicians who speak of God. They look strong. They have great influence. They have millions of followers. Then the ground began to shake. It was a low rumble at first, then a violent heaving. I watched in horror as the giant trees began to sway. Their roots, which I could now see through the transparent earth, were shallow. They spread wide, grabbing at the surface soil, but they did not go deep. As the shaking intensified, the soil gave way. With a sound like thunder, the great oaks toppled over. They fell, crushing the smaller plants beneath them, exposing their naked, shallow roots to the air. The people who had gathered under them screamed and scattered, left without shelter. But then I noticed something else. Scattered among the fallen giants were small, unassuming shrubs. They were not impressive to look at. Some were gnarled, some were small. But when the earthquake hit, they did not move. Jesus touched my eyes and I saw beneath the surface. These small plants had roots that went down for miles. They bored through the topsoil, through the clay, deep into the bedrock itself. They were wrapped around the stone so tightly that to move the plant, you would have to move the mountain. The root of Jesse, Jesus said. The storm that is coming will not respect titles. It will not respect fame. It will not respect the size of a ministry or the size of a synagogue. It will test only one thing, the root. He walked over to one of the fallen giants and looked at it with sorrow, not malice. He spent all his energy growing upward to be seen by men. He neglected the secret place. He forgot that the height of the tree must be matched by the depth of the root. When the winds of 2025 blow, Avraham, many great names will fall. Do not be dismayed when you see it. Do not let your faith be shaken when the heroes of the faith collapse." He pointed to the small, sturdy shrub. "This is the woman who prays in her closet when no one is watching. This is the man who refuses to cheat in his business, even when it costs him money. This is the student who speaks the truth when the professor mocks him. They are small in the eyes of the world, but they are giants in my kingdom. They will stand because they are rooted in me, not in their reputation." "How do we grow these roots?" I asked, feeling the shallowness of my own life. "I spent 40 years studying, Lord, but I feel I have no roots." "Roots grow in the dark," he answered. "They grow in the difficult seasons. They grow when you choose to trust me, when you cannot feel me. They grow when you obey, when it hurts. Tell them, Avraham, tell them to stop building their leaves and start drilling into the rock. There is no time left for show." The forest dissolved, and we were standing on a narrow bridge made of light. Below us was a chasm so deep I could not see the bottom. It was dark, swirling with black smoke. On the other side of the bridge was a land of such brightness that I had to squint. I saw people walking toward the bridge. They were carrying heavy sacks on their backs. Some sacks were small, like backpacks. Others were massive, crushing burdens that bent the carrier double. I watched a man step onto the bridge. He was carrying a sack labeled betrayal. He was muttering to himself, "I will never forgive him. After what he did to me, I have the right to be angry." He took 2 steps onto the bridge of light, but the weight of the sack was too much. He stumbled. The bridge seemed to reject the weight. He fell sideways, tumbling into the darkness, still clutching his sack. I saw a woman approaching. She carried a sack labeled regret. She was weeping, saying, "I can never forgive myself. I am too broken." She tried to walk, but the burden pulled her down. Then I saw a child, a young boy. He was carrying a small sack labeled mockery. Someone had bullied him. He stopped at the entrance of the bridge. He looked at Jesus, who was standing at the other end. The boy took a deep breath, unslung the sack, and dropped it into the abyss. He stood up straight, light and free, and ran across the bridge into the arms of the Lord. "The bridge of forgiveness," Jesus said. "This is the hardest test of all. In the days to come, offense will be the trap of the enemy. People will betray one another. Families will turn on each other. Brothers will sell out brothers. The spirit of offense is being poured out like a poison." He looked at me, and his gaze penetrated my soul. "You, Avraham, you carried a sack of pride and judgment against my followers for decades. That sack would have dragged you down if I had not cut the strap on the highway." I nodded, weeping. "I let it go, Lord. I let it all go." "Tell them," he commanded, "tell them that they cannot cross into the new season carrying the luggage of the old. They must forgive, not because the other person deserves it, but because the bridge cannot support the weight of hate. If they hold on to their right to be offended, they will not survive the crossing. December 22nd marks a time when the heart must be light. Unforgiveness will be a millstone." The scene changed abruptly. We were inside a room that felt like the Holy of Holies, yet it was not a temple made of stone. It was a place of intense intimacy. The walls were lined with golden bowls. Angels were moving quietly, taking these bowls and pouring them onto a fire that burned in the center of the room. Every time they poured, the fire roared, and a sweet fragrance filled the air. "What is this?" I asked, feeling a sense of awe that made me want to remove my shoes. "This is the engine room of history," Jesus said. "These are the prayers of the saints." He took one of the bowls. It was not filled with gold or jewels. It was filled with a clear liquid. "This one," he said, looking at it with infinite tenderness, "is filled with the tears of a mother praying for her prodigal son. She thinks her prayers are hitting the ceiling. She thinks I do not hear. But look." He poured the bowl onto the fire. The flames shot up, changing color to a brilliant blue. A shockwave went out from the fire, passing through the walls of the vision down to the earth. I saw the shockwave hit a dark apartment in Tel Aviv. A young man holding a needle suddenly stopped. His hand shook. He threw the needle away and fell to his knees, crying out for help. The prayer arrived. Jesus said, "It does not always arrive when you want it, but it always arrives." He showed me another bowl. This is the prayer of a small church in China, praying for the peace of Jerusalem. They do not know you, Avraham, but they have been praying for your people for years. He poured it, and I felt a shield of light form over Israel. Prayer is not a religious duty, Jesus said, his voice rising in intensity. It is the ammunition of the kingdom. The enemy fears nothing more than a kneeling saint. He mocks your plan. He laughs at your strategies, but he trembles when you pray. He turned to me, and for the first time, looked stern. But my people have stopped praying. They complain, they post on the internet, they worry, they discuss, but they do not pray. The bowls are not filling up fast enough, Avraham. The fire needs fuel. Tell them to return to the altar. Tell them that before December 22nd, the only strategy that will work is the one received on their knees. If they want to change the decree, they must enter the courtroom of heaven. Silence is consent. If they do not pray, the enemy will occupy the land. The vision dissolved, and we were standing in a dark city street. It was night. I saw a man walking toward us. He looked ordinary, dressed in work clothes, but on his forehead, glowing with a faint but undeniable blue light, was a mark. It looked like the Hebrew letter Tav. He walked past demons that were lurking in the shadows. The demons hissed and reached out to grab him, but as soon as they saw the mark, they recoiled, burning as if they had touched fire. They could not touch him. Then I saw another man, well-dressed, looking confident. He walked down the same street. He had no mark on his forehead. As he passed the shadows, the demons latched onto him. They whispered in his ear. They tripped him. They climbed onto his back. He didn't see them, but he felt the weight. He looked depressed, heavy, angry. The seal, Jesus whispered. Ezekiel saw it. John saw it, and now it is being placed again. Who receives this mark, I asked. Is it only the holy ones? It is for the sires and the mourners, he replied, referencing the prophet Ezekiel. It is for those who are grieved by the sin of the land. It is for those who do not agree with the darkness. It is for those who have surrendered their will to mine. It is not a visible tattoo, Avraham. It is a spiritual reality. The enemy sees it clearly. The angels see it clearly. He looked at me. In the time of sifting, there is no neutral ground. You are either marked by the Lamb or you are marked by the system of the world. The mark of the Lamb is humility, love, and truth. The mark of the world is pride, greed, and self. Is the mark permanent? I asked. The ink is wet, he said mysteriously. It is being written now. Every decision you make, every time you choose truth over a lie, the mark becomes clearer. Every time you compromise, every time you love the world more than me, the mark fades and the other mark begins to form. December 22nd, he said again, the date tolling like a bell. By that day, the ink will dry for many. The separation will be visible to the spiritual eye. Those with the seal will walk through the fire and not be burned. They will have a peace that makes no sense. Those without it, they will be consumed by the panic of the nations. Suddenly, the sky above us opened. I saw a massive celestial mechanism. It looked like a clock, but it was made of stars and galaxies. The gears were turning with a sound that vibrated in my bones. There were no numbers, only epochs. The hands were moving, and they were approaching a point that glowed red. The time is not just short, Jesus said, looking up at the clock. The time is specific. God does not work in vague approximations. There are appointed times. Modim. You know this, Rabbi. I nodded. The feasts, the appointed times. We are approaching a cosmic mode, he said. The world thinks it is just another December. They are planning their holidays, their sales, their vacations. They do not hear the gears grinding, but you hear them now. He grabbed my shoulders. The shift that happens on December 22nd is a shift in authority. The lampstands are being moved. He waved his hand, and I saw a map of the world. I saw great cathedrals, massive megachurches, historic synagogues. In many of them, the light was flickering and going out. The presence of God was lifting, leaving behind only empty rituals and echoes. But in living rooms, in basements, in underground gatherings, in office break rooms, new lights were sputtering into existence. They were small, but they were fierce. They were burning with pure oil. I am taking the lampstand away from the institutions that have sold themselves to the culture. Jesus declared, I am bypassing the gatekeepers. I am lighting fires in the hearts of the nobodies. The revival you wait for will not come from the platforms, Avraham. It will come from the tables. It will not be televised. It will be contagious. This is the last warning, he said, his voice softening, becoming pleading. I do not want anyone to be lost in the dark. I do not want them to eat the dust. I do not want them to fall from the bridge, but I will not force them. Love cannot force. He stepped back, and the light around him began to intensify, becoming blindingly white. You have seen the disease. You have seen the cure. You have seen the anchor, the root, the bridge, the seal. But there is one last thing you must see. The most difficult thing. What is it, Lord? I asked, trembling. You must see the face of the enemy, he said. Not the devil with horns, but the spirit that is seducing the world. You must know what you are fighting against, and then I will show you the glory that is coming. The light swallowed me whole, and I felt myself being pulled into the final vision. The light that had swallowed me began to dim, but it was not fading into darkness. It was shifting into a strange, artificial twilight. We were no longer in the heavenly realms, nor were we on the earth I knew. We were standing in a place that looked like a magnificent global stage, a platform that hovered over the nations. The enemy does not come with horns and a pitchfork, Jesus said, his voice low and urgent. If he did, everyone would run. He comes as an angel of light. He comes as a solution. Look. I saw a figure rising from the center of the stage. He was beautiful. There's no other word for it. He possessed a charisma that was magnetic. He was not terrifying to look at. On the contrary, he was everything the world desires. He looked intelligent, compassionate, modern, and safe. He was surrounded by screens, by microphones, by the adoration of the masses. He spoke, and his voice was like soothing music. Peace, he said. Safety, unity. We are all one. There is no sin, there is only misunderstanding. There is no judgment, only acceptance. You are perfect, just as you are. You are your own God. I watched as the people below, the ones I had seen eating the dust and looking in the mirrors, lifted their hands to him. They were weeping with relief. They didn't want a savior who required them to pick up a cross. They wanted a savior who would carry them in comfort. They wanted a king who would validate their brokenness, not heal it. This is the spirit of the age, Jesus whispered. It is the spirit of compromise. It tells you that truth is flexible. It tells you that love means never having to say repent. It wears my name, Avraham. Look closely. I looked and my blood ran cold. The figure was holding a Bible, but he was holding it upside down. He was using religious language. He talked about blessing and destiny and miracles. But there was no mention of the blood. There was no mention of the cross. There was no mention of holiness. It was a counterfeit gospel, sugar-coated with poison. In the days leading up to December 22nd, and especially afterwards, Jesus said, this voice will become louder. It will offer a false peace to a terrified world. When the shaking begins, this spirit will step forward and say, I can fix it. Just give me your freedom. Just give me your allegiance, and I will give you bread. He turned to me, gripping my shoulders. This is why the seal is necessary. Without the discernment of the Spirit, even the elect would be deceived. My people must know my voice so well that when the counterfeit speaks, they feel a sickness in their gut. They must know the difference between the Holy Spirit and the spirit of emotional hype. How do we fight this? I asked, feeling the seductive power of the image. He is so convincing. You do not fight him with arguments, Jesus replied. You fight him with the testimony. You fight him by dying to yourself. The enemy has no hook in a dead man. If you are dead to your pride, dead to your need for approval, dead to your greed, he has nothing to grab onto. The only ones who will resist this seduction are those who have already laid their lives down at my feet. Then the scene shattered. The artificial twilight was ripped apart by a sound that shook the very foundations of the vision. It was a roar, loud, primal, triumphant. It was the roar of a lion. The beautiful figure on the stage cowered and dissolved like smoke. The stage crumbled. The screens went black. And then the true dawn broke. I saw the sky roll back like a scroll. I saw a light that made the previous golden light seem dim. It was the glory of the coming king. I saw him, Yeshua, not as the humble teacher standing next to me, but as the judge and the captain of the armies of heaven. His eyes were flames of fire. On his robe was written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. It was not yet the end of the world, but it was a vision of the ultimate reality breaking through. I saw the dry bones of the house of Israel standing up, breath entering them. I saw the faithful from every nation rising to meet him, their chains falling off, their faces radiant. This is the end of the story. Jesus shouted over the roar of the wind. the sifting, the trials, the darkness. It is all leading to this. I am coming, Avraham. Tell them I am not dead. Tell them I am not a myth. I am at the door. The joy was so intense it felt like my heart would explode. I wanted to stay in that moment forever. I wanted to run into that glory. But the vision began to swirl. The colors blurred. The sensation of the pull returned, violent and sudden. Go, he commanded, his voice echoing like thunder. December 22nd is the key. Prepare the bride. I am with you always. No, I screamed, reaching out for him. Don't send me back. But the command was absolute. I felt myself falling, tumbling through the void, heavy, heavy, heavier. Gash! I drew in a breath that felt like breathing broken glass. My eyes snapped open, white light, beeping machines, the smell of antiseptic, the crushing, suffocating weight of my own body. He's back, someone shouted. Doctor, we have a pulse. He's back. I tried to move, but pain shot through every nerve ending. My legs were shattered, my ribs were broken, but I didn't care. I was crying, sobbing, tears streaming down into my oxygen mask, not from pain, but from the loss of his presence. I had been in the throne room, and now I was back in a sterile room in Jerusalem. My wife, Sarah, was there. She looked aged by 10 years. She grabbed my hand, weeping. Avraham? Avraham, can you hear me? I looked at her, and I loved her more than ever, spies, but I saw her differently. I saw the worry lines, the fear. I squeezed her hand weakly. I saw him, I rasped, my voice barely a croak. Sarah, I saw the king. The weeks that followed were a blur of surgeries, physical therapy, and whispered conversations. The doctors called it a miracle that I survived. They said my heart had stopped for over 8 minutes. They talked about trauma and oxygen deprivation. They tried to explain away my hallucinations. But how do you explain a hallucination that changes your entire theology? How do you explain a dream that leaves you with a love for people you used to despise? When I was finally released, I went back to my study. I looked at my books, my commentaries. They were valuable, yes, but they were not him. I began to read the New Testament, the Brit Chadasha, not to refute it, but to devour it. And there, on every page, I found the face I had seen in the vision. I started speaking, first to my family, then to my students. Many left. They called me a heretic. They said the accident had scrambled my brain. My brother refuses to speak to me. I have lost my standing in the community. I have been asked not to return to the yeshiva, but I have gained the pearl of great price. And now I am sitting here at my desk in Jerusalem. I am looking at the calendar on the wall. Today is December 15th, 2025. My hands are shaking as I type this. The date he gave me, December 22nd, is exactly 7 days away. 1 week. I look out my window at the streets of Jerusalem. The winter sun is pale. On the surface, things look normal. The buses are running, the markets are open, people are arguing about politics in the cafes, but if you look with the eyes of the spirit, you can see the storm clouds gathering. You can feel the tension in the air. The geopolitical situation is hanging by a thread. The markets are trembling. There is a sense of something holding its breath, waiting to exhale. The great sifting he warned me about is at the door. I am not a prophet in the biblical sense. I am just an old rabbi who was given a second chance. But I know what I saw, and I know that what happens next week will change the trajectory of our lives. He told me that December 22nd is a line in the sand. It is the day the mirrors break. It is the day the broken cisterns run dry. I do not know if it will be a single event, a war, a crash, a disaster, or if it is the beginning of a spiritual wave that will wash over the earth. But I know that the time of neutrality is over. You have 7 days. Do not spend them in fear. Fear is the enemy's currency. Spend them in preparation. Check your anchor. Is your faith tied to your bank account, to your government, to your pastor, or is it tied to the living God? If everything you have is taken away next week, do you still have him? If the answer is yes, you are ready. Inspect your fruit. Are you holding on to offense? Forgive today. Pick up the phone, make the call. Do not cross into this new season carrying the heavy sacks of the past. The bridge is too narrow for your grudges. Get the seal. How? By surrender. Go into your room, close the door, turn off the phone, and tell him, Lord, I belong to you. Not to the world, not to my ambitions. I am yours. Mark me as your own. Feed on the bread. Stop watching the news for 6 hours a day. It is poisoning you. Read the Psalms, read the Gospels. Fill your spirit with the words of truth, so that when the lies of the seducer begin to scream, you will recognize the voice of the shepherd. I am pleading with you, as a father pleads with his children. The God of Israel is not silent. He is moving. The lion is roaring. Do not be found sleeping at the table of dust. If you are reading this, it is not an accident. The Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, has guided you here. He is waking you up. We are entering the days of awe, but we do not enter them alone. We enter them with the King who has scars on his hands, the one who conquered the grave, the one who whispered to me in the halls of heaven, I am with you always. Please, for the sake of your soul and your family, take this seriously. I will be praying from Jerusalem every night between now and the 22nd. I will be praying for the nations. I will be praying for you. If you are with me in this watch, if you are ready to receive the seal and stand as a witness in the coming storm, write your country in the comments below. Let us form that invisible net of prayer that he showed me. Let us be the ones who light the fire when the lamps of the world go out. Subscribe to this channel, not for numbers, but so we can stay connected when the confusion hits. Share this message with 3 people, your family, your friends, even your enemies. The time is short. The King is coming. Shalom from Jerusalem.